DC films the story of arrogance, incompetence, more arrogance, and even more incompetence. I could write a book of the history of the incompetence and arrogance and the mistakes of DC films, especially the DC entertainment portion. But we don't have DC entertainment. I mean, they were bad enough. Now we have the so-called DC studios. Blue Beetle has flopped. I'm sure you already know that. Unless you're an idiot, you already knew that was going to happen. But they projected a 30 million domestic box office for Blue Beetle. Well, it beat that record, not going above that record, but actually finishing beneath with just over 25 million domestically. The Latino influencers lied to you. Blue Beetle is not great Latino representation and inclusion. I have sat in Latino homes, lovely families, lovely people, welcoming, hospitable, funny, interesting, well-educated people, right? I don't remember seeing an elderly Latino grandmother cocking a gun while she was serving me my dinner. Insulting representation. Now, don't forget, this film was made by Latino people, directed by a Latino director, but an extremist, propaganda merchant Latino director. This is just another way of New Hollywood rewriting history. How can Bruno, I think that's the actor's name, be playing someone called Cold? They took Ted Cold, a character they didn't even use physically, and tried to make the name Latino. Disgusting, disgusting, disgusting. What is the point of James Gunn? If James Gunn can't even do the job Zaslav brought him in to do, which wasn't to redefine a new DC universe for the future, just maybe recycle the old DCEU and just give us more of the same, right? Because that's exactly what they're actually planning. But he was supposed to sell these movies because he's supposed to be so popular. So what happened? What went wrong? People don't believe him because the man's a liar. He told you that you should go and see the Flash movie because it's one of the best comic book movies he's ever seen. Liar! He tried to sell you Shazam! Fury of the Gods. He tried to sell you Blue Beetle. He was standing there with his partner, Peter Safran. Why is Peter Safran co-CEO of DC Studios? Now, I don't have any particular vibe or, any angst against Safran, but he's part of the Hamada-verse. The Hamada-verse is Blue Beetle. It's Shazam! Fury of the Gods. It's the Flash movie. The movie that was supposed to change DC forever. But what the fuck was it going to change it into? Blue Beetle and Batgirl were going to be the future. Do you remember that? Is that a future that you, as a DC fan, really wanted? No! Zack Snyder has made it clear that after he finished his arc, he was going to create a Flashpoint scenario, kindly, for any new creative to start again and to do their own thing. Basically, he was going to give another creative, maybe James Gunn, maybe Joss Whedon, maybe Jeff Johns, whoever, the opportunity to start again once his arc was finished. Basically, if they allowed him to finish, DC would be in a much better place now, whether you love or hate or you're indifferent to the Snyderverse. These are the facts. Instead, they're fucked because they tried to recycle his Justice League movie and it failed. Then again, they tried to recycle his universe via the Flash movie. They insulted the Snyderverse with the way they used General Zod. Disgusting. Disgusting. No wonder the actor was saying he didn't enjoy his experience of being in that movie as much as he did Man of Steel. He was barely in that movie. He's not even the villain of the movie. There isn't a villain of the Flash movie. They took that movie and urinated over Jeff Johns' Flashpoint Paradox comic, one of the greatest graphic novels of all time. But people are still defending Walter Hamada. People are still, defending James Gunn, a man who decided it would be great to bring the most unpopular Batman Bruce Wayne in a silly, jokey cameo at the end of the Flash movie, George Clooney. Don't get me wrong, I love you, George, but you're a shit Batman, and you've admitted that yourself. Who asked for George Clooney? Who told him that was a thing? The point is, they tried to get everyone else, and they all said no. But if James Gunn and Zaslav and the Hamada versus Safran, who is very much involved in the new plan, how confident are you feeling, real DC fans? Why is Safran involved? He has a stench of failure with his connection to the Hamada verse. It's another flop, everyone. Are you going to defend it? Verified critics lied about the movie to basically manipulate its Rotten Tomatoes scores, because this is what they do. They are not real critics. They are not Sir Barry Norman. They are not the great critics of yesteryear. They don't love movies. They don't care about movies. It had great representation, according to them. It had shit representation. And if you're a Latino influencer or a box office analyst, right, and you're lying, or you're just happy that your people were actually on the big screen, so you're saying it was great when it wasn't, then you are insulting your own community. I may not be Latino, but I know many, many Latino families, and they're not happy by the shitty representation and inclusion of the Latino community. They made Latinos a bad joke. You can't trust these people. The truth is, this film should never have been about the Latino community. It should have been about Jamie Reyes, a great DC character. He's been represented so beautifully in animation, like Batman the Brave and the Bold, my favourite Batman animated series. If a cartoon could do a Latino character justice without boring us with an entire Latino family that makes Latino families look dumb, and they're not, by the way, then where are we now? I'm hearing a lot. It's not that bad. A few years ago, it would have succeeded. The critical drinker of all people saying that, respect to the lad, he's done very, very well for himself. But at the end of the day, I don't agree. This film was never going to succeed. This was the future of the Walter Hamada plan, everyone. And it sucked. Ray Fisher did WB a great favour by driving him out, from the company. But to be fair to Hamada, even though clearly what he was going to do was shit, and I didn't realise that at the time, I thought this guy was competent. I was wrong. Shows how much I knew and know. But at the end of the day, Hamada was being sent by Emmerich and Johns, to basically deal with Fisher, deal with Snyder, because they didn't have the balls to do it. So to them, Hamada was just a means to an end. Hamada was treated badly. Even Fisher should have understood that, Hamada was just passing notes through classes. And what he was telling Fisher wasn't from him. Ray should have known that. And Hamada is now at Universal, and I know for a fact he couldn't get away from DC and WB quick enough. And who can blame him? So the Hamada plan is a disaster. We're now seeing the Hamada plan for what it is and what it was. An absolute joke. But what you do with movies you've already made and already invested money in. When you're WB, you're a debt-ridden company, and your DC movies, your DCEU movies are not making money. But the Batman made great money. The Joker made even better money. These are revered artistic pieces by auteur directors that will live long in the memory. These are the type of films, these are the type of DC films I want to see. And it's the type of DC films Zack Snyder gave us. And they fired him. Man of Steel made good, solid box office. BVS made good, solid box office. Not blockbuster, not history making, but good enough. Where a studio with any balls or guts says, yes, we're WB, we're about the auteur, we're about the art, let's stick with this, right? Let the guy finish what he's doing. We're not losing money, we're not making the money we would like, we're not making the money that Disney Marvel's making, but that's okay. We put him in. There's nothing we can do. We're not losing money, we're making money. It's fine. Yes, some of the fans were polarized. The critics hated it. Who fucking cares? Let the man finish what he started. You made it worse. You rewrote and reshot Air's Suicide Squad movie, which was a mistake. You turned Zack Snyder's epic part 1 of Justice League movie into a bad joke. One of the most embarrassing, cringy moments in film history. And the stain on the Warner Brothers themselves, who founded the studio. I'm a huge DC fan. It gives me no pleasure for DC to fail. I want DC to thrive, but I don't want shit, mid, not bad, not good DC movies to succeed either. But I wasn't sitting there hoping and praying Blue Beetle would fail. It's no skin off my nose either way. But this is your James Gunn future. This is your DCU future. But if you want some real bitter coffee to swallow, if you're a real DC fan, here's the big truth. As I keep on saying, James Gunn was brought in as an influencer to sell these remaining DCEU movies. He's failed. He's got one last chance. It's Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom time, everybody. Very, very soon. No trailer, a shitty poster with Mira and Aquaman. Hey, my name's David Zaslav. Yeah, I've got a cowboy hat on. I'm riding my horse. I know. Let's start promoting Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, a movie with shit test screening reactions. Let's promote a character played by a lady everybody fucking hates. Giddy up, everyone. See you soon, Mr. Gunn. You're doing a great job. You and Peter are the men. That is the type of incompetence we are faced. It's a joke. And when I go on Twitter and I see people defending Gunn and defending the future plan when there isn't even a real plan. We had rumours yesterday of an actor playing the new Batman in Brave and the Bold. Gunn, of course, shot it down and again said he hasn't started the casting process. He has started no development on Brave and the Bold. The only reason Machete was announced as the fake director, because he ain't directing a movie that's never gonna happen, was to distract you from the Flash being shite. They announced this just before the release to try and pile on some hype for the Flash movie. Yet again, like lying to us that Tom Cruise loved it, it failed. Like the lie that Stephen King loved the Flash movie, it failed. When are you people going to wake up? You have to wake up. There is no DC universe. It's all a lie. We'll be lucky to get Superman Legacy. Let's see what happens there. We've been told there's pre-production. They've announced some casting. It's interesting. I was excited at first. But now the more I look at it and I see the handling, James Gunn's handling of the DCEU, something he had nothing to do with. And he wouldn't have had to interfere with those films if he'd just done a clean reboot. But clearly he's not in total control. Because I'm sure he wants to do his own thing, right? And he wouldn't want to be recycling the old DCEU. That's the reason we are where we are now. Because that's all they've been trying to do from day one. From the Suicide Squad, the first Suicide Squad. Recycling what Zack and David Ayer and others were attempting to do. An epic, awesome, interesting, artistic, individual plan. That would have been awesome for many, many people. If you didn't like it, you didn't have to watch it. All you had to do is wait until it was over, then they would have rebooted it in the right way. Not in this lame, half-assed way. It's despicable. It's despicable how bad these people are at their job. We were all excited about James Gunn coming in, but now we're starting to see it for what it is. So there's no braving the bold in development. People making the excuse that, is it the culture nerd as usual, the defender, one of the first defenders of James Gunn Inc. If it's not the culture nerd, it's someone else, I apologise. Basically saying there's industrial action. He couldn't develop the movie if he wanted to. Even if there was no industrial action, there still wouldn't be anything in development. That's the point. All they're doing is making one Superman movie and seeing if it's a success. That's if James Gunn's even allowed to finish his Superman movie. Because I believe if Aquaman and Lost Kingdom fails, Zaslav will hold Gunn totally responsible, because he again has been giving James Wan notes. A director who Gunn could never lace James Wan's boots. A much superior director taking notes from James Gunn. Gunn, a director who's always bragged about ignoring notes. Well, the irony isn't lost on me, boys and girls. Going back to the inclusion of Blue Beetle, let's look at Black Adam yet again. Actually, some brilliant Muslim representation and inclusion. A much better movie. A 67 million domestic opening weekend, which is looking better and better and better when you compare it to Blue Beetle, The Flash, and Shazam! Fury of the Shit. Right? It's a mess, everyone. And it turns out that actually the Snyder fans who have been warning me about this, because I'm a Snyder fan, but ultimately I'm a fully DC fan. I love Zack Snyder, but I'm not just here for Zack. I love DC and I want it to thrive in the right way. And Zack Snyder's arc was the right way. He weren't going to be here forever. He was going to do his thing, then piss off again. And even allow them a back door to start again. The very thing they've been half-assedly attempting to do now by recycling what they wouldn't allow him to finish. So we are in trouble. DC is in trouble. No one should be happy about this. But the Snyder fans warned me and they warned you about James Gunn. We closed our ears. He has lied on multiple occasions. He has confused the audience. He's interfered with DCEU director's vision, especially James Wan, who clearly isn't happy. If James Gunn wants to save his job, he must give Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom back to James Wan. If he doesn't, it will fail. Whatever changes he's making will fail. Why are you interfering with James and Jason's movie, James? Why are you interfering with it? What's the point? You should have just let these movies play out and finish. You shouldn't have announced you were here until these movies were done. You should have allowed them to play out, let the rumours, false Hamada to stay. And then when Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the final DCEU movie ever, was released, you make the Hamada announcement that he's gone. And if he left before, you don't have to fucking announcement. Nobody knows if Hamada's there or not anyway. He was basically only sharpening pencils. So, you know, it's ridiculous. But if they waited until the final DCEU movie released in theatres, then they could have announced a new plan, if there ever was a new plan. Why didn't they do that? Because there was never a new plan or a motivation to create a new DCEU. The main reason and priority of Gunn coming in as a popular MCU director and an influencer trying to make these remaining mid-shitty DCEU movies money. And James Gunn, everyone, has failed to do so. And I'll repeat what I said before. It is my belief, if Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom flops, he's done. He's out. Because this was the major reason he was brought in. And all the rest of it was garnish. About a plan, about Superman Legacy, his slate. Why have we suddenly only heard one part of the slate? Because at first they released part 1 of Gods and Monsters. Then they realised because it was taking the shine and the hype levels away from this year's DCEU movies, they decided not to announce anything. Now, they were going to announce their entire plan, the rest of their Gods and Monsters plan at CinemaCon, while they were basically showing the Flash movie for Access Movies, bloggers, influencers, and of course we know the bullshit that came out of there by these corrupt fucking people who are part of the system, part of the manipulation of the Rotten Tomatoes scores and everything else. Imagine being an influencer that lied about Blue Beetle having great inclusion and representation. Imagine that. Imagine being one of those people. And there you have it, everyone. It's there in black and white. Blue Beetle doesn't just flop in line with the projections from the analysts. It's actually worse. Just over 25 million, not even 50 million global box office. Why? Why couldn't people even be bothered to watch this movie? Is it the shield influencers talking about representation? I believe that's an element of it. People will say, oh, people have never heard of Blue Beetle. Let's look at the excuses one by one. Well, nobody ever heard of Iron Man, but it worked and it made money and it set up one of the most successful franchises of all time. Another excuse being used by people, especially Latino influencers, is that, oh, it's because actors couldn't promote the movie. Well, you know, that hasn't worked with DC either. You know, actors were there for the Suicide Squad, it flopped. Actors were there for Birds of Prey, it flopped. These are just lame-ass excuses at the end of the day. And you've got to be better than that. You've got to be more intelligent. Even as a passionate DC fan, I have to be honest. What's going on with these movies and the level that they're failing at tells you a lot. It tells you that the DCU plan, that's not much of a plan, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, you know, is already in trouble. Because James Gunn, no question, wrote a great Guardians trilogy. I enjoyed The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, but you've got to question a man who thinks it's right not to do a clean reboot of something that's been damaged and hasn't been working for quite a while. Since Aquaman, because that movie made $1 billion, because at least it was epic and exciting and emotional and a great score and everything, well directed by a great director, superior in every way, from James Gunn. So ever since Aquaman, we've had a lame, mid, worse than the MCU. I mean, they just don't get it. This is what happens when you fire pioneers for hugging too hard. And I'm not just talking about DC and WB. This is all over the board. Look what they did at Pixar. You know, the guy who founded Pixar, they fired him for hugging too hard. And basically they've been failing ever since because they replaced him with a bunch of political extremists. Of course, that's the real reason they got rid of him. And this is what's happened all throughout all the studios and all the TV networks. And streaming very much has killed television. And now streaming is dead as well. So Hollywood are shattered in 1 billion pieces. And they're trying to pick up the pieces. But can they? Only by bringing good, intelligent, talented people back into creativity and development. I can't see that happening. It's a mess. This could be the end of Hollywood. But is this the end of DC as we know it? I don't think so. Because the Batman 2 will be great. I'm confident. The Joker 2, Folie à Deux, will be great because of the people making them. And it's their vision. No one is telling them what to do. But when you look at Blue Beetle and how miserable the box office was, the turnout was, we were seeing seating plans and maps dead empty. And you know, when people do this, people say, oh, there's an agenda. Look, nobody's going to waste their time faking these maps. It was true. That movie has flopped. Now, Matt Ramos, Soups, who's clearly a Latino lad, and I'm sure he's upset that it's flopped, saying, well, it's only the first 3 days. Well, Matt, you understand how this game works, right? The first 3 days is where you make your money. If you don't make any money in your opening 3 to 5 days, then your movie is going to flop. Say it with me, Mr. Ramos, Blue Beetle failed. You knew it was a bad movie, but you didn't care because it represented your people, but it represented your people badly and shamefully, because if they made a film with the Greek Cypriot community, which is where I'm from, obviously born in the UK, as you can tell, but my mum and dad were Greek Cypriot, and they insulted my culture, I wouldn't be saying, oh my God, it's amazing, it's great to be seen. I'd be saying, this is fucking disgusting. And because I know so many Latino people, because I've spent my time with many families and I've eaten with them and I've drank with them and appreciated them, I feel their embarrassment and shame. And as I say, I don't know the people that The Rock had behind the scenes to make Black Adam, but he picked a great production team. Great writer, great director, and the cast, Pierce Brosnan, Aldis Hodge, Sarah Shahi, who I think really shined with Pierce Brosnan and Aldis Hodge. Really, those three were amazing. Then there's the young boy who played Sarah Shahi's son. Sensational. I know a lot of you think that Black Adam is a bad movie, but I don't. And I think it's the best DCEU movie since Aquaman. I genuinely believe that. I know I say it every day, but I've got to reiterate where I stand. Honesty is the number one thing. I can't be a DC biased fan any longer, and I have to tell you where I am with this. This movie, Blue Beetle, Shazam! Fury of the Gods and The Flash really frightened me for the future of this new DCU non-plan. Because I am frightened. I'm frightened to my very core. If it was me, I would cancel Gunn's DC Universe if there is anything to actually cancel. But the reality of this situation is, boys and girls, and anyone else, however you're represented, identify yourselves as, all welcome on this channel. Have your say, do it responsibly and constructively. I'll always respond when I can. But the truth is, the DCU may be dead before it started, and maybe we have been led up the garden path all along. The only question that's unanswered: was Henry Cavill ever really coming back, or were they trying to rise up the Black Adam box office? We'll never know that. But if we go back to the brilliant marketing by The Rock, by the way, he paid for a lot of that marketing, by the way, you can tell he really wanted Black Adam to be good. He loves Black Adam, he loves DC. You know, this wasn't like his other movies, and he's done some okay movies, by the way. He's not the greatest of actors, he plays himself. That's okay, so was Arnie, so was Sly all those years. And Van Damme, that's okay. We can't criticise him for that. He's never claimed to be William fucking Shakespeare, but he really put everything into Black Adam. And that has to be said. And there's too many people not willing to give The Rock the credit he deserves for Black Adam. And during the interviews and during the marketing, you could tell he had a definitive plan for his corner of DC. It was clear that Adby and DeLuca had agreed with him for him to have his own corner of DC away from what Gunn or whoever was going to take over was going to do. Cavill was going to work exclusively with him. They could have even allowed that to be a thing where The Rock's side is the old DCEU and The Rock's now running the old DCEU, and Gunn could have started again. Maybe that would have been too much. Maybe that could have been too much. But listen, the DCEU has been lame and mid since Shazam, as far as I'm concerned. I don't mind Shazam, but let's be honest. It was an underwhelming movie. Let's be honest. It's for kids. It's great. It's good. But let's be honest, right? And I think Black Adam was the only one that truly excited me. And as I always say, I watch that film very often. I listen to Lorne Balfe's beautiful score when I'm getting ready, when I'm having a shave, when I'm having a shower. I think it's an excellent score. I think if we continue the DCEU with The Rock and his people, I think we would have had a good time at the movies. And if it was able to release in China, maybe that could have happened. Yeah, the third act, the villain battle wasn't great, but as I've already said, what really else could have done? So I think that The Rock did everything to make Black Adam a great movie. Obviously, I'm not calling it The Dark Knight. I'm not calling it Superman the movie, but it was good. It was really good, and I enjoyed it. And it's much better than all the lame Hamadaverse movies we've had. Because the Blue Beetle box office really does give you a statement. When a movie flops, it's a statement from your audience. And the past 7 movies haven't brought DC fans to theatres. That's a statement. And it's a mixture of statements. And we're all forgetting, of course, that Zack Snyder, bless him, was telling us that he couldn't wait to see Blue Beetle with his child, and that representation matters. Now, I don't really understand his motivation to support the people who constantly are stabbing him in the back, most recently refusing to put Snyder Cut footage in this DC documentary and putting Justice League footage in it. And Zack is still trying to help them. That's the kind of guy this guy is. Enjoy Rebel Moon, Zack. You deserve to make something where people let you do what you do, because you are a genius. You are great. And the Snyderverse was wonderful and beautiful. And it was wonderful and beautiful enough to be allowed to finish. You made enough money for these fuck buckets to be allowed to finish. And it's because they reacted. They reacted to other people's reactions, to the reactions of bloggers and to people on Twitter, that they were too reactive too soon. If they just allowed you to finish that, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in now.